A deck that fell as quickly as it rose. Mathmech. Now this is a relic of Master Duel's recent history, where back towards the beginning of this year, this deck was everywhere. Tier 1 best deck in the game without exception nor contest. And as soon as the Ishizu cards came out, and then Tournaments came out, and then Bestials came out, it just felt like that every wave of support that happened after Mathmech was engineered specifically to decimate this strategy. So today what we're going to be doing is bringing a Mathmech deck into ranked and sort of seeing the damage in terms of what its capabilities are. It's still an impressive strategy, if not a rather linear one. There's not really any innovation or changes or anything left that needs to be done with Mathmech. It isn't that complicated of a strategy. And because of that, it is rather easy to telegraph, it is very easy to predict, and it does have some pretty significant choke points. However, the strategy still is very strong should it operate the way in which it operates. So I have a few replays I want to show off you today. We are including some of the Bestial cards in our deck as well. Now, you don't always want to be summoning these guys because it does lock you out of certain plays. But at the same time, having them all here as cross-out targets, as well as having them here as ways of generating advantage off of potential L, or even just as hand traps against the likes of Tournaments, means that they still bear some sort of value in the strategy. You don't have to play them, but again, I just wanted to, given the theme of the video, if that makes sense. But yeah, we're gonna dive in, watch a few replays, and sort of see what the damage is. We're going to go over a deck profile at the end as well for those who are curious. But yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this or anything else that we do, be it our live streams, be it our in-depth deck profiles, be it anything that we do here. Subscribe to see more, like the video if you enjoy. Let's get into game one. This matchup is going to be going straight into the very decks that we have playing against. We're playing against branded Tournaments featuring Bestials. This is literally everything that Mathmech hates. So we're going to see if in this particular matchup we even stand a chance. Luckily for us, we do play quite a number of hand traps in this deck, and that's one of the strengths of the deck. Now, we're specifically playing things like Veiler to help counter matchups like this because we know the Tournaments give us a hard time. Unfortunately, our opponent also has Siren, so we're going to use our Ash Blossom to stop the Siren here as well. Just trying to slow the opponent down as much as they can before they can try to mill a bunch of their cards. They're going to activate Branded Fusion because of course they are. They have Rhinoheart, Branded Fusion, and Siren because they just do. However, they don't have any remaining fusion targets for Albion, or perhaps they just chose not to use it. They're going to instead summon Lubellion and use Lubellion's effect to place Branded Regained back onto the field, as well as Branded in red. So their plan is essentially to attack us during our turn. We do have Bestial Saronir here, so Bestial Saronir will help us to counter the Branded in red, which is solid. We're going to summon out our Subtraction and our Multiplication, going into Alimbertion here. Alimbertion then detaching 2 materials to search our deck for a Mathmech card. We're going to grab Circular, which we'll now activate, sending Sigma, summoning itself to the field. Sigma now activating in the graveyard to summon itself back to the field. However, that is where the Bestials come in. The Sigma is a huge choke point in the strategy, specifically against Bestials. We're going to tribute off our Alimbertion here to try and summon out an additional Mathmech. They're going to go Branded in red, and that's when we're going to use the Saronir of our own to banish his Branded in red target, meaning no more fusions for you. The Fallen of Albaz is gone. Alimbertion summons back Multiplication. Now we're going to use Circular's effect to search our deck for a Mathmech spell or trap card. We're really only playing Super Factorial and Equation, and Super Factorial we're not going to be using here because we're planning on winning this turn. We're going to go Splash Mage here. Splash Mage activates its effect, brings back the Multiplication here. We're going to link off into Transcode Talker, but like a dummy, I forgot that you can't activate Transcode Talker's effect the turn in which you special summon a non-Cybers monster, meaning Saronir locks us out of Transcode Talker, but that's totally fine. We do have the Equation in hand, Equation bringing back Multiplication, going into Access Code Talker, and Multiplication both going to activate. Access boosting himself up to 5,300 attack points, and then Multiplication multiplying that by 2 up to 10,600 over Kikalos. Easy game. There you go. So, I wanted to show that off first. Because it shows that we can play through counters. Yes, there are choke points in the strategy, there are issues in the strategy. However, even if your opponent is able to exploit them. The sheer versatility of the majority of cyberspace strategies, Mathmech being no exception, means that you'll almost always have a win condition. That is worth bearing in mind, and I wanted to just show this off so that you know that we're playing against the big boys here. We're not like, this isn't casual, this isn't some sort of baby mode. Like, we're taking our counters on head on, and we're still able to find wins. Let's get into game 2. Now, if only every matchup was quite so simple, this time we're going to be going first here, starting off with Sigma, going into Mirage. That's going to trigger off the Parallelic Seed in our hand. Not an ideal line of play, but it is one that at the very least generates us the resources that we need to go into Alimbersion. Alimbersion then detaching 2 to search our deck for Circular. That's when they're going to go for the Ash Blossom here. Unfortunately, if we let that go through, our turn sort of dies right there, then and there. So we have to go for Call by the Grave on that Ash Blossom. Which, you know, is fine, just less than ideal. The Alimbersion then is going to grab a Circular. Circular, of course, being the most powerful card in the deck. Let's be real. We're going to send Diameter, summoning out the Circular, tributing off Mirage, bringing out the Diameter, grabbing Super Factorial, and we do admittedly make a small mistake here. We're going to go into Splash Mage. Splash Mage is going to revive back one of our cards. We're going to bring back Diameter. Now we're going to use these two to go into Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker then bringing back the Splash Mage, and we're going to use Splash Mage and Sigma to go into the, as well as Microcoder, sorry, to go into the Decode Talker Heat Soul. Now, a couple of things here. Number one, we weren't playing Cynet Destruction or whatever the counter trap is. Right, issue number one. Issue number two is, it's been so long since I played Mathmech that my dumbass forgot that if you use Sigma as link material after bringing it back from the graveyard, it banishes itself. Now, why is that an issue? Well, that's an issue because of Super Factorial. Super Factorial would allow us to bring back up to 3 different Mathmechs from the grave. Ideally, we would like to go into the likes of Laplacian, which would take 3. Unfortunately, we no longer have 3. We have 2. So that's entirely my bad. And maybe this matchup would have gone a different way if we had been playing the correct cards or played that correctly. It is what it is, though. Luckily, we do top deck into 2 hand traps off of Decode Talker Heat Soul. We grab both Effect Veiler and Ash Blossom. Realizing our mistake, we're going to go Alimbersion here early so that at the very least, we still have a negate on our Alimbersion in the form of Diameter. So this guy still has an Omni Negate attached to him. Now we're playing against Sprite. Sprite, of course, are just going to throw cards at the field until something happens. They're going to go Sprite Blue, grabbing Jet. And Jet then going to special summon itself, grabbing from their deck the Starter, grabbing Starter. They're going to activate Starter here. We decide to Ash Blossom this basically because Starter's going to try to bring out Red. So it is, and Red is going to be able to negate our Ash Blossom anyways. But I forgot that we hit Ash Blossom with Call by the Grave. So this is basically just a demonstration of, yes, if you play bad, you're going to lose. We attempt to negate the Sprint. Of course, we knew he was going to use Red to negate our negate, so we're going to negate his negate of our negate using Effect Veiler. Yeah, keep up with that one. So yeah, obviously less than stellar play is going on so far. I will be honest, I haven't played Mathmech in quite some time, so I was still sort of getting into the swing of it, but it was still a pretty interesting game nonetheless, so I did want to show it off. We're going to go the Baldrake here, banishing the blue. Admittedly, we probably could have done this a little bit earlier, but it's totally fine. There's not really any good bestial targets to banish off of the likes of Baldrake. Sorry, against the likes of Sprite, so, like, what are you going to do? Sprite is going to be receiving a small tap on the wrist fairly soon, in regards to that little swap frog as well as their jet. So we're going to have to see how the ban list treats the new version of Sprite. They're going to go Gamma Burst here, boosting up everything by 1400 attack and defense. That's not going to be enough to get them lethal though. They are going to take out our 2 Alimbersion as well as our Transcode Talker, leaving up only our Decode Talker Heat Soul before linking off into Masquerena. Ronin Totem bringing itself back to the field yet again before ending their turn. So we're not completely out of this game just yet. It's not quite that simple. We are going to top deck into Addition. Paying 1,000 life points, we're going to draw an additional card off of our Heat Soul. We kind of need this to be something good. We grab a Veiler. Veiler's fine. We're going to mill Sigma off of Circular. That's going to trigger their Red. Red's going to tribute Ronin Totem to negate the Circular's effect. That's fine. We knew he was going to have to negate something at some point. Sigma then activating in the graveyard, bringing himself back to the field, normal summoning the Circular before going into update Jammer. Now we're going to go off into Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker then gaining 3,000 attack points, as well as being able to attack twice here. Should grant us something, but unfortunately our opponent still does have the ability to go into Masquerena, unfortunately linking off the whole board into the Underworld Goddess. Now that is quite unfortunate. We are going to bring out Addition as well as our Baldric to keep us alive for one additional turn if possible. Luckily they don't have an extender, so they are just going to attack in and take out the Baldric. Again, we sort of really need something here. We really do need something. We draw into Multiplication. Multiplication would be good if we had the ability to go into a tuner. We're going to try and grab one, our Circular here off of our Signet Mining. Circular going to pitch the Nabla, summon itself, linking off into Lingaribo here on the off chance that that face down card is an infinite impermanence. And look at that. We called it infinite impermanence getting negated by the Lingaribo. And Circular going to search the deck for an additional Mathmech related spell or trap card. The only problem being in this particular situation is that they have the out. They have the Underworld Goddess. We decide we're going to activate it anyway. We knew it was getting negated. Like, there was no, you weren't fooling anybody. That's fine. And our options at this stage are rather limited. We are going in to go into Splash Mage, but I'm pretty sure at this stage our extra deck is left so depleted that we don't actually even have a boss monster left to summon. So yeah, we pretty much scoop it up. Unfortunate. It is unfortunate. It says time limit again. We were just playing so close to the timer the whole game. Yeah. It's just one of those things. Absolutely. There were certain plays that could have been very different at the beginning of that game. I'm not going to say for a second that this game can be used as evidence for Mathmech being good or bad, because there were issues with the plays at the beginning. So absolutely. However, it shows off some of the issues, some of the interactions as well. That's still pretty important. Yeah, interesting game. Not really much else that can be said about it. Let's get into game 3. Game 3. Now we're going second here again. Now we're playing against Tearlaments once again. Now you're going to notice actually that, I mean, first of all, we've got 2 Bestials in hand, right? So we're feeling kind of nice about that. 2 Bestials and a Ghost Ogre. Kinda nice. We are going to banish them early from the graveyard here. That is grand. They're going to grab Sullick. Sullick soon to be limited to 1. Merly then fizzles out. Magnemite's going to search our deck for a card at the end of this turn. That does unfortunately give him the Havness. Havness gets milling. And from the looks of it, it is another branded version of the strategy, because I spy a little Cartesia and Albion. They mill out their Fairy Tale Snow before going into Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur activating to pop the Havness to trigger its fusion summon effect. We're going to go for Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion here. He is, of course, going to negate that off the Baron de Fleur, which we saw coming, which is why we kept the Saronir second, so that we could still get over the fusion. So we banish the Havness off of the Saronir. Ghost Bell gets negated, of course, by the Baron de Fleur, but that's totally fine. That means this Baron de Fleur negate has been used up. We grab Drissworm at the end of the turn, banishing the Fairy Tale Snow before it could be a problem. Now we've got 3 Bestial monsters on board. Drawing in the Max C, not the greatest draw for turn. We do have Subtraction here, bringing the Baron de Fleur down by 1,000 attack points, activating Sigma in the graveyard. That's going to trigger his Keldo, basically, to stop our Sigma. Yet again, introducing the counters to Mathmech. We are going to go for Nabla here. Nabla tribute off the addition to bring out Subtraction, sorry, for multiplication. And at that stage, our opponent has had enough, and they decide to scoop it up. Did Mathmech win us that game? No. Bestials did. Would Mathmech have won us that game? Potentially. Although it would have been very, very, very difficult. It's just another, I don't know, it's weird. And that's exactly what I'm trying to show off. I'm trying to show off that it feels like everything around is meant to stop Mathmech. Tearlaments stop Mathmech. Branded nowadays, Branded stops Mathmech. The Sprite has a really good matchup against Mathmech because of its versatility and how much it spams out monsters. It feels like everything is meant to counter Mathmech at the minute. But either way, we've got one more game. Let's get it. Well, if there's one thing that can be put to rest, it's the fact that every matchup using Mathmech is usually a quick one. We're playing against Flu here. They're going to go Eaglin here. We try to imperm the Eaglin. They banish it off of the Advent of Adventure, because of course they do. And they manage to dodge our Veiler. Now that does unfortunately mean our 2 Ghost Bells are going to be rather useless in this matchup, because I don't anticipate them going to use any cards that will interact with Ghost Bell. They're going to go Rabina and Eaglin here. We do luckily have a second Veiler, but unfortunately we don't have any starters in our hand at all. So that's a bit of a problem. They are going to add back Eaglin still, but they do lose their Surge and additional normal summon, so that should put it into their turn, and there you go. Getting into turn 2 here, if we draw into any of our main starters, we might have a chance. We do luckily top deck into Signet Mining, dropping one of our Ghost Bells to grab us a Circular. Circular now sending Sigma to the graveyard. We're going to special summon itself out to the field, triggering Sigma to summon itself as well. That is, however, going to trigger their trap card, giving them an additional normal summon. Now, all of you already know where this is going to go and what the problem is. We are going to activate Circular, searching our deck for a card. They're going to activate Eaglin, searching their deck for a level 7 or higher Winged Beast monster. They're going to go Apex Avian, tributing 2 to summon out the M-Pen. We're going to grab the Equation. Now, unfortunately, their trap card in the graveyard can banish itself for cost here to flip all of our monsters face down. And if there's one thing that Mathmech hate, well, there's not one thing, there's a lot of things, but one thing that they hate in addition to all of those other things is being flipped face down, because then they can't be used as Link or Exceed material. So unfortunately, that just brings an end to our turn. There's nothing else we can do. We are going to go main phase 1 here, activating the Unexplored Winds, going Eaglin. Eaglin grabbing another monster. Rabina then, of course, going to do the same. I don't believe in this particular matchup we stick around for very much longer. I'm just going to fast forward it, because we all know exactly how Flowenderies works. They get a tribute off our card for another M-Pen search for the map. Summon the Shree. We actually do get to resolve our Ghost Ogre here against the Shree, which is pretty funny. Here's one card that I've never seen in Flowenderies before. Elbor's the Sacred Lands of Simorgh. All Winged Beast monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense. You can reveal a level 5 or higher Winged Beast monster in your hand. This turn you get an additional, you can tribute summon your monster for 1 less tribute. If you control a Winged Beast monster, you can immediately normal summon 1 Winged Beast monster. So you get like an additional normal summon as well as the less tributes needed for a tribute summon. It's a neat card. It's pretty cool. I didn't realize that was even a card, to be honest, and with it being an R rarity, I appreciate at least some level of innovation has gone into this deck, if not very much. They do unfortunately have lethal damage. And there you go. Yeah, again, not really very much else that can be said on the matter. Let's get into the deck profile. Lo, how the mighty have fallen. Mathmech, the former tier 1 strategy, now struggling to keep its title as even a viable deck in this current metagame. It feels like the deck is forced to play in a very different manner, because its primary strategy of resolving Superfactorial, as you saw in that gameplay, is virtually non-existent. It's extremely unlikely to resolve because of the amount of counters you have in this metagame, and it's simply ineffective. And even if you do manage to resolve it, it's neat, but it's not game ending, certainly not as much as it was before, thanks in no small part to the prevalence of tier limits. Now, we're going to go through the deck profile. If you want to play it like this, you can. One card, of course, that I would recommend adding in that we didn't initially have in is Signet Conflict. This was here to be searched off of Microcoder, so you can either play the Signet Conflict in addition, or you can cut both it and Microcoder. Whichever you prefer. That's totally fine. I don't think Microcoder generated very much value for the strategy, so I would likely cut both. So, let's go through it. One of the advantages of the deck is that you have a million spots to play hand traps. So we've got double Veiler, we've got triple Maxi, we've got triple Ash Blossom, we've got triple Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. This card is virtually mandatory in this deck because of how powerful Bestials and the Keldo, Mudora, how big all of those cards are. It does, of course, have some sort of limited utility outside of those cards as well. Like, it can negate Lubellion the Blazing Dragon, Searing Dragon, sorry. It can negate Albion's effect. It can negate Tearlaments shuffling back to Fuse. It can do a few things. It's not the most useful card in the world, but it does of course have those interactions, as well as more specifically stopping your opponent from hitting you with Bestial monsters and the Keldo Mudora. Sigma, we played 2 copies of Sigma because you're bound to lose one. We formerly only played one of this card, but again, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But you sort of have to play 2, to be honest with you, because one will get banished. It will. You're not going to be able to stop it every single time, and Sigma is that important of a card that you definitely need to be playing more of it. We've got the one of Nabla. Nabla is a card I added in sort of mid-testing because we found ourselves in a position where we could have been winning games if we had more consistent access to tuner monsters. So Nabla is here as an additional sort of tuner monster to access, as well as granting you access to multiplication from the deck, because in my experience testing, this deck unironically plays a lot better going second now than first because of the power of its sort of OTKs, which might be a viable way of playing the deck in the future and is definitely something I'm going to explore in more detail. This was more a test of the traditional Mathmech strategies. We might want to build versions of Mathmech that focus more specifically on Transcode Talker, Mathmech Final Sigma, or even Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, in order to go for lethal damage turn 2. We've got addition and subtraction, which basically, I'm not even talking about what these cards do, sorry. Sigma, I should clarify, if you control nothing in your extra monster zone, can special summon itself from the graveyard to the field, locks you into Cyber's extra deck cards for the rest of the turn, and when it leaves the field, it is banished. Nabla allows you to tribute a Cyber's monster to special summon any Mathmech monster from your deck, and if it's sent to the graveyard, target a Cyber's monster in your extra monster zone and it can attack twice during that battle phase. Especially powerful, of course, in combination with your Mathmech Final Sigma or your Transcode Talker. Addition and subtraction can add or subtract 1,000 attack points respectively for any monster on the field in order to special summon themselves from the hand. They're decent extenders. Multiplication. You can target a level 4 Cyber's monster in the field that becomes a level 8. Of course, that is most prevalent in the ability to summon Mathmech Final Sigma. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, target a Cyber's in the extra monster zone, double its attack points until the end of the turn. Of course, this card is amazing at enabling OTKs with your 2 big beaters. We've got double diameter. Mathmech diameter on normal summon will target a level 4 Cyber's in your graveyard and summon it, but more specifically, if you use this card as material for a Synchro or Exceed summon of a Mathmech card, that card gains an additional effect until the end of the turn that allows them the ability to negate the activation of any card. So it basically just adds an Omni Negate onto any of your extra deck summons, and considering Superfactorial can set that up on your opponent's turn, that typically makes your Laplacian or even an Alimbertian in a pinch more powerful than they otherwise would have been. Mathmech Circular, the single best card in the deck and one of the sort of best starter cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion. I think this card is absolutely incredible, to the point where in the TCG this card was just limited to 1. Mathmech Circular, you can send a Mathmech monster from your deck to the graveyard to special summon this card out from the hand, and if another Mathmech is summoned to your field while this card is face up, you can then add a Mathmech spell or trap card directly from your deck to your hand. Something worth noting is that you can only attack with 1 monster for the rest of this turn, so if you are using this card going second, you gotta set up one of your biggest beaters possible, and you need to back it up with the likes of Nabla and or multiplication to ensure you've got enough for lethal. If you're going first, that's of course not a concern. Circular is one of the single best starter cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So a lot of our deck is built around utilizing this card to its fullest. This card will basically send Sigma from your deck to the graveyard to summon itself. Sigma then can use its effect to special summon itself to your field, triggering off the secondary effect of Circular, meaning you get 2 level 4s on board, so you can go into the likes of Alimbertian or any number of link plays, and you've yet to utilize even your normal summon. So definitely very, very, very powerful. The Circular is the only reason that Mathmech even has the remotest chance of competing. We've got 1 of each primary Bestial monster: Magnemite, Sireneer, Drissworm, and Baldrake. Again, they all are only here primarily as cross-out targets, if I'm being perfectly honest, as you can negate these cards if your opponent were to try and use them against you. However, they also do serve a purpose by special summoning themselves to the field by banishing a light or dark monster in either graveyard as a quick play effect, so they serve a purpose in preventing Tearlament fusions, or sort of anything like that. Again, they have a wide variety of uses, to be honest, and they are pretty good cards. Yeah, you saw in the gameplay how these guys single-handedly carried us in certain games. So yeah, definitely worth playing. In an actual traditional Mathmech strategy, you would probably cut them, to be honest. Probably in favor of some going second sort of blowout cards, perhaps the likes of Dark Ruler No More, or Triple Tactics, Lightning Storm. Anything like that might be even better in these slots if you were playing a more traditional Mathmech deck, but I just wanted to put them in to show it off. Parallelic Seed. This guy can special summon himself from the hand to the field. Whenever you link summon, it summons itself to a zone that the link monster points to, and then will summon another copy of itself from the deck. And if this card is special summoned, its original level becomes 4, meaning it's perfect for going into the likes of Alimbertion or any of your other plays. So Parallelic Seed is definitely a versatile card, helps you get started when you don't have any other starter. Sign Up Mining. Send a card from your hand to the graveyard to add a level 4 lower Cyberse monster from your deck to your hand. Basically just 3 extra copies of Circular. Same as Small World. It basically just lets you search your deck for virtually any card by tagging one out from your hand, as long as you know the lines. I'm not going to explain the lines in too much detail here because you either know them already, or me trying to explain them is just going to confuse you even more. Test it out. If it melts your brain, replace it. But this is just 3 additional copies of Circular, for all intents and purposes. Equation is Monster Reborn for a Mathmech card. Cult by the Grave, of course. Crossout Designator, primarily for Bestials, but of course, I mean, given the amount of hand traps we have in this deck, we can play a wide variety. We're not playing any Imperm. You could play Imperm, of course, in place of the Bestial cards, if you really wanted to. We chose Veiler over Imperm because Veiler is a pretty good bridge for Small World. But you could, of course, play Imperm in the place of your Bestials. And lastly, Superfactorial, which is supposedly the actual goal of the Mathmech strategy, and once upon a time it definitely was. However, trying to resolve this card in this economy is only going to leave you depressed. You can target up to 3 different Mathmechs in your graveyard. You can special summon all of them, and then you can either synchro summon or exceed summon using all of the cards that you just summoned. Now, of course, your ideal goal is to exceed summon into Prime Mathmech Laplacian, which we'll actually talk about now, considering we're moving on to the extra deck. Pre-Mathmech Laplacian will, on summon, detach up to 3 materials from itself, and you will resolve these effects in order. You can spin a card out of their hand, send it from hand to graveyard, send a monster they control to the graveyard, and send a spell or trap they control to the graveyard. If you detach 3 materials, you can do all 3 of those things. And the idea as well, of course, is that you're going to be using Diameter as material off of your Superfactorial, meaning your Laplacian, for the turn on which it is summoned, which will be your opponent's turn, will also have an Omni Negate built into it. So pretty damn solid, but like I said, the likelihood of you resolving that in this economy is slim to none. Geomathmech Final Sigma. As long as it's in the extra monster zone, this card is unaffected by anything that doesn't say Mathmech in its name. If it battles a monster, any damage your opponent takes is doubled. Yeah, if it ends up getting destroyed by battle, or if it's destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can grab a Mathmech card from your deck and add it to your hand. Primarily here is a huge unaffected beater that can swing over your opponent's monsters for lethal damage. Again, you're going to be boosting this up with your multiplication to exacerbate the amount of damage it's already doing by double, meaning you can normally just swing for game off of this guy very, very easily. So, Alimbertion. Alimbertion is one of the better starter cards in your deck. You contribute a monster, you contribute 1 monster to special summon a level 4 Mathmech monster from your hand or graveyard. But more importantly, when this card is summoned, you can detach between 2 to 4 materials to activate one of the appropriate effects. 100% of the time, you're going to be going for effect number 1, which is detaching 2 materials to search your deck for a Mathmech card. Now, you're either going to be searching for Circular if you don't have access to it, or if you've already had access to Circular, you'll almost certainly be searching for your Diameter in order to make sure you have it in your graveyard for your Superfactorial. We have Mirage as a very sort of generic starter card, helping with your Parallelic Seed in particular. You can sacrifice any normal summoned monster with 1000 attack or less to summon this. It will trigger off your Parallelic Seed, as well as give you a Cyberse monster on board for any of your other plays. That's pretty much it. It's primarily here for Parallelic Seed, to be honest, because not only does it turn the vast majority of your Mathmechs into a starter, because they all seem to have 1,000 attack points for the most part, it means all of your hand traps in a pinch also serve as a starter card in the Mirage, which allows you to summon Exceed. Exceed allows you to do Alimbersion. Alimbersion grabs your Circular, and suddenly, off of the normal summon of an Ash Blossom, you're in the game. So Mirage 100% worth its spot in the extra deck for that reason alone. Lingaribo, occasionally a useful card. It comes up on certain end boards. Again, if you're able to go absolutely nuts and your opponent has 0 interruptions, you can tribute a Cyber Monster basically to go into this card. It does have a pretty useful effect that you actually saw in the gameplay, where you can tribute it to negate the activation of a trap card. Decent card, absolutely. Cyber's Wicked. If you summon a monster to a zone that this card points to, you can banish a Cyber's monster from your graveyard to add a Cyber's Tuner monster from your deck to your hand. That would be your Diameter, that would be your Nabla, that would be your Sigma. Any of those cards, deck to hand if you summon a monster to a zone that this card points to. Update Jammer. Of course, Update Jammer. If this card is used as a link material for the link summon of a monster, you can target a monster on your field, basically the link monster that it was used for, and it can attack twice that turn. That's the idea. Basically, it's just giving your access code talker 2 attacks. IP Masquerena, really solid card, allows you to quick play link summon. It's not the most useful in this specific build. What I would do with this deck 100% is I would cut a Laplacian, and I would play Avramax. 100%. The reason we were playing 2 Laplacian is because, yet again, as I said, once upon a time, you were able to resolve Superfactorial with some degree of success and or accuracy, meaning the double Laplacian actually occasionally came up. In this version of the deck, even the singular Laplacian rarely comes up because they're too busy banishing your whole graveyard. So in this particular version, I would almost certainly drop a Laplacian for a Crusadia Avramax just to heighten the value of your Masquerena should you need to use that as a fallback plan. Potentially, if not Avramax, you could of course use the likes of Apollosa. I'm just not the biggest fan of a 2 material Apollosa. It's just not my thing. I don't like it. Splash Mage, double Splash Mage. This card can revive a Cyber's monster from your graveyard in defense position. That does of course mean you cannot revive a link monster off of its effect. Do bear that in mind. It has to be summoned in defense. Basically just an extender. That's why we're running 2 of it. It's pretty solid. It being water attribute as well is pretty useful for both your Decode Talker Heat Soul and your Access Code Talker. But first comes Transcode Talker, the next big extender of the deck. That allows you to target a link 3 or lower Cyber's monster in your graveyard to special summon it to a zone that this card points to. So it basically does the opposite of Splash Mage. It revives a Cyber's monster but only a link monster. Again, really solid extender, basically enables most of your plays. Also, I should note that something that does sometimes come up is that if it is co-linked with a monster, this and the monster it's linked to gain 500 attack points, and neither can be targeted with card effects. That is actually big because it does come up, especially in combination with the Decode Talker Heat Soul. Decode Talker Heat Soul, you summon this using 2 Cyber monsters with different attributes. That's where Splash Mage comes in, and essentially you can pay 1,000 life points to draw a card. Pretty awesome. He gains 500 attack points for every monster it points to, so normally you're going to have this card under your Transcode Talker, so they're pointing at each other, making this card 3,300 attack points and untargetable, and able to draw you 2 cards, assuming you summon it frame 1, before your opponent even has a chance to play. So just getting a bunch of extra cards, of course, is really nice. You saw in the gameplay we top decked into an Ash Blossom and an Effective Healer going into our opponent's first turn off of this card. It's especially useful considering the sheer volume of hand traps that we play. Mechanic Crusadia Avramax, of course, one of the most significant Cyber boss monsters in the game and a personal favorite of mine. You basically, if this card's in the field as a result of being summoned off of Masquerena, which is almost always, it'll be untargetable, indestructible. Your opponent cannot target any monsters on your field for attacks other than this, and if this card does battle an opponent's monster, it gains attack points equal to their attack points until the end of that battle. Again, pretty solid card, very, very difficult for many decks to get rid of. Sometimes this guy just walks with games by himself. The only real consistent out that most decks have is the Underworld Goddess, and good luck trying to set that card up with the Avramax raining down pressure on you. Of course, if they do actually manage to get rid of it using a card, then you get to shuffle a card on the field back into the deck. Pretty awesome overall. And finally is the Access Code Talker, who is going to be winning you most of your games, if I'm perfectly honest. This card gains a 1000 attack points multiplied by the link rating of one of the link monsters used for its summon. You can banish a link monster from your graveyard to destroy a card your opponent controls, and is not once per turn. However, you can only banish each attribute of monster once per turn. So if you banish one dark monster for its effect, you can't banish another dark monster until next turn. So yeah, this guy will be winning you most of your games. Your opponent also cannot respond to the activation of his effects with any card effects. So yeah, there you go. That's the deck. Would I recommend playing it like this? Probably not. I think, of course, the Bestials are a little bit too decorative. You have a lot of other powerful options, and what I would even really consider is shifting the focus of this deck to worry more about going second, if I'm being honest. I think that's where most of its value is going to come from. Because of the power behind the likes of Sigma and the Access Code Talker, I feel like exemplifying that aspect of the deck is going to be where it finds its niche, rather than trying to ignore the fact that the meta is set up to stop Super Factorial. But yeah, Mathmech is just one of those decks where it's entirely meta dependent. This deck is and will be relevant to some extent going forward, and its popularity and power will sort of rise and fall with how popular and powerful the Ishizu / Bestial cards are at any stage. For example, if Tier Limits gets absolutely slashed and there's no real reason for people to be playing it anymore, or to be playing Keldo and Midora, this deck gets better. If people aren't playing Dragon Link, if people aren't playing Bestials, if people aren't playing Branded, this deck gets better. But the moment this deck gets better, people are going to want to start playing those other decks to counter it, and then it comes back down. So it's sort of a victim of its own success sort of thing. Whenever any deck that is powerful, that has a really well-defined weakness, comes out, it is always entirely relevant to what's going on at the time. Mathmech is no exception to that rule. So you will at some point see Mathmech become powerful again. I have absolutely zero doubt that that is going to happen. However, that simply isn't today. But anyway, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about one of what is the coolest decks in the game. Let's be real. It is really cool, really fun. I love Mathmech. That's why I wanted to give them a fair shot. Unfortunately, they just didn't quite, they're just not quite up to snuff. But anyways, thank you very much for watching right to the end. Like the video if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.